All right, guys. Sorry about being a little bit late. Whoever catches the replay and things like that. But I'm live now. So what I want to kind of discuss, and I'm gonna, of course, screen share some things. Is the reason why Western women act the way they act. Like how unhinged they are, how out of control they are, like basically how they're not even women anymore. Like I kind of consider them like I kind of compare them to bandits because right now as it stands, I think what they want to do is just steal, kill, and destroy. And one of the perfect examples of that is the simple verdict with Tory Lanez. When you look at the verdict with Tory Lanez, I was under the impression that justice will be served, for the simple fact that, when they did the DNA test, there was nothing on the weapon, there was nothing on the pistol or anything like that. But yet they still said that he did it, you know. They still found him guilty under everything. And I was just like surprised. Like, how is that possible when he there was no evidence or anything like that, pointing in that direction that he actually did that, that he actually was in possession, um, was in possession of a firearm, and so this is why, for me, it goes to show you that the system, you know because even when you look at, for example, you look at, usually, I'm gonna be honest, usually you know when you do have money, right? uh it's easier to get out of jams. It's easier for you to get out of a jam because you have money, and with money, uh you can get out of a lot of things, right? um so basically, I want to say that you would expect Tory Lanez, who is a high profile, he's actually a high profile artist. We know him to be one of the artists. I guess you can call him a R&B crooner. That's what they call him. They call him, when you're like a singer slash rapper. They call you a R&B crooner. Walaikum salam rahmatullah barakatuhu. So yeah, like when you look at the guys like Tory Lanez, when you look at guys, I guess you can say Ty Dollar Signs. When you look at guys like Little Dirk, they're known as like R&B crooners, right? And you would think that him being an R&B crooner, he would be able to get himself out of this jam because of the simple fact he's making millions upon millions of dollars. I think even on one video he showed that he had a like some kind of new Maybach that didn't even come out yet. It was a brand new like Maybach that he didn't even come out, that hasn't even been released. So he was making good money, but it still appears that that wasn't good enough. That the word of a Jezebel woman, put him in the jam, and even when the word of that Jezebel woman was false, it still enabled, unfortunately, him to be, given the the guilty verdict. You know what I mean? So what I'm gonna say is that this hasn't been new. I have to break down why women in the West are like the way they are, and let's just go to the foundation of America itself. When you look at, in the past, there were black men who, for example, would get killed off of the fact, off of a like false testimony of a woman. Like if the woman just said, "Oh, he raped me," use that R word on him, there was a chance that he would get killed. there was a situation where this one kid, I think he was I think he was like 12 years old or something. I think what happened was the trial was so speedy, they sentenced him to death. And the way they sentenced him to death was by a electric chair. And the testimony was false. When you really look at this entity we call America, its foundation was never, ever, ever on any moral ground. When you look at even the Civil War wasn't to end slavery, as people think. It was just basically over people wanting to succeed from, like, I believe they wanted to succeed from, it had something to do with the North and the South and succession. That's what the Civil War had to do with. It had nothing to do with like the freedom of black people, as many people think, you know. And the thing is, I want to say is that as sad as this sounds, um, that's honestly been the story of America, you know. And this is not a pity party. Don't get it twisted. This is not a pity party. But what I'm basically saying is that America as an entity, right? America as an entity, it would not be America if it wasn't for the things that it was involved in, you know, be it the massive genocide of Indians who were first in this place, be it be it um the transatlantic slave trade, and be it what I'm about to show you in this live right now. Okay. And inshallah, this live won't get flagged because so many people like to flag my crap, you know, in the bushes. But I have to like really kind of show why American women are the way they are, because they have been living in a country that has not only allowed them to perpetrate the things that they're perpetrating, but has actually encouraged it through their through the country's own actions. Okay. And um when you look at like societies that were societies of virtue, and where societies were stable and had something to go off of, those societies were usually stable for a long time. But you know, eventually corruption would set in, and you know, things happen. It we can take Muslim Spain for example. It started off in a good way, but it ended in a bad way because corruption set in, and that's when it happened. And um that's the same thing. But the thing is with America, it never started in a good way. That's the thing. It never really started in a very, very great way, you know. So this is why I'm gonna say, uh you know, I'm gonna just keep it real, you know. It never happened in that way. So without further ado, I want to show a few clips, and maybe I'll show a bigger clip to show the track record of what America does in order to stay in power. And then I'm going to factor that back into American women as well. So let me share my screen. My screen is a mess because I be having files that I'm doing edits and stuff with, you know. I have like a hell of a lot of files that are on my desktop because I'm usually doing edits or something like that. So yes, my desktop looks messy with all these files. Yes, I know. You know, but I just be working. But let me show you guys basically you know what we let's start off with a couple of things. let's start off with a couple of things. Um, let's look at what America did to Grenada. Now, Grenada, I'll give you a background. I'll give you a little bit of a background on Grenada. Grenada was it is a Caribbean island. Basically, it's a Caribbean island, and the thing is that it was basically under a situation where it was just backwards. Things were just backwards on that island. Um, and what happened is that a group of well educated people, they were well educated basically, and they decided to take matters into their own hands, and they started a revolution. You know, and people were actually seeing results of that revolution. The revolution was paying dividends. People literacy rates went up, food production went up, um, you know, going abroad to study went up. Like just different types of things were going on over there, and it went up. Like it went well for them. You know. Now their friends, however, and this is what bothered the United States. Their friends were the enemies of the United States. So those friends included Libya. Those friends included, I want to say, North Korea. Those friends included Cuba. Those friends included every like that. Those things. Those friends included the former USSR. So they included these places that the United States doesn't like, doesn't get on with. These are where the friends were included. Now, um, what I want to do is I want to basically not show the aftermath of what happened in Grenada. Okay, let's see. Because the people of Grenada are the lead. That's the leader of Grenada. That's the leader. That was the leader of the Grenadian Revolution. His name was Maurice Bishop. Now, keep in mind another thing that needs to be said, and this is for my fellow Muslim brothers, is that there were actually Muslims in that revolution. There was a brother, but I think he went rogue, unfortunately. But there was a Abdullah in the revolution. There was a Habib. There was a Yusuf. So the Muslims were always involved in there, because I think what happened is Islam came to it a little. Islam, of course, you have Muslim slaves in Grenada, but I guess there was a revival of Islam at that time, and not the Nation of Islam, by the way, regular Islam. Leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the Let me try to make the screen bigger. Just give me a second. Let's try to make it bigger. So the thing is, and people don't know this, that America supported apartheid, you know. And when you look at how American black women treat American black men, you know, it's very much apartheid. Especially now that you see what happened with Meg the Stallion. You know, I know there's this notion in America that there's black love, that black families, this, that, and the other, but that whole thing is a dream. You know what I mean? There be people who advocate for black love and stuff like that, but the opposition is very large. So unfortunately, they won't be successful. But yeah, Maurice Bishop, he fought against these things. Maurice Bishop believed in the nuclear family. Maurice Bishop was also anti-feminism as well. And so what happened was is that there was some discontent in his party because people unfortunately can be bought off and stuff like that. So what happened is a couple of people from his political party actually were bought off by the United States and actually encouraged the United States to invade Grenada. And also, unfortunately, people from his party, decided to shoot him via firing squad in the back of the head. And I guess there were a couple of like uh, people studying Grenada or something, or Americans in Grenada. Now I don't know what they were doing there exactly, but they were there. And so there were so many lies told about Grenada, about the airport being built, about so many just other things that were not true at all whatsoever. But of course, people believed the lies, and you know, it led to this. Also, keep in mind that the other areas who were like the other islands, um, who were just like so goody goody with America, um, they actually authorized the invasion as well. Let's keep that in. Let's look at like different ethnic groups who are against like men as a whole. You know, like you, for example, you look at Latin American women in this country, they feel the same way about men. You look at Asian women in this country, they feel the same way about men. And traditionally speaking, they come from cultures in which where men are they're kind of like the, I guess you can say, the head of the household. Men are the ones who, maintain order and structure, you know. But black women and white women of this country have swayed them to join their side. And we can use this example here that America will sway people who know better to join their side. Now, keep in mind too that American women, let's compare what the US does, because the US will make accusations to these places that are not even true. They'll make these accusations up and they're not even true. They're not based on any evidence or anything like that. But people will still believe that, oh yeah, this is what's going on, you know. And so I want to say this I want to say this and compare this to what women are allowed to say on the internet about the whole passport movement. they're allowed to make all these accusations that are not even true. That's the thing. Like they're just literally inventing accusations that they don't have any kind of they don't have any they, they don't have any no basis to it, you know? They don't have any basis to what they're talking about, you know? But let's continue. This is still my favorite Caribbean besides Haiti, Haiti and Cuba. Those are my favorite Caribbean islands. I'll say Haiti, Cuba, and Grenada. You know, Grenada. Those are my favorites. And so yeah, but that's just example number one. Example number two, Cuba, the one that they haven't succeeded in. Okay, let's see.
Castro came to power in 1959 at the height of the Cold War. He quickly became a formidable force on the world's.
Now I want to say something too. The gender war can be kind of looked at as the Cold War in a way, because the thing is, there's two ideologies that are going into play here. The first ideology is that of traditional manhood, and embedded into that traditional manhood from a Muslim perspective is traditional Islam, traditional Orthodox Islam. From just like a non-Muslim perspective is traditional gender roles, right? Um, and so you look at the other side of the spectrum, the women's side of the spectrum, and it's opposite of everything that we're standing for, like, which includes what they want is like on their side, what they want is no accountability, no gender role, free access to any man of their choosing who has status and has money and will and access to his resources without having to do anything in return for those resources. And we can understand that America as a country has this same mentality. And so this mentality gets passed down to the people, and it gets passed down to the women especially, you know. But let's continue.
Stage. The United States was determined to prevent communism from gaining a foothold in the Americas. In 1961, President Kennedy approved a disastrous, ill fated invasion, which was called the Bay of Pigs.
Now I want to say something too about communism. Communism, Islamically speaking, it's not permissible, right? But what I want to say is that when America calls a place a communist country, the only reason why they're calling it a communist country is because it's not being governed by them, or it's not submitting to them. So, like, I've been to Cuba before, and it's, I think like when you look at Soviet style communism, they did not allow you to have freedom of religion. They were like atheists. They were pretty much atheists. Like I will straight out say like Soviet style communism is like kufr. It's like basically kufr. But when you're in Cuba, I saw people at Protestant churches. I saw people at Catholic churches. I even came across the Spanish Quran when I was in Cuba. I saw people practicing traditional religions related to the African aspects of the culture. I saw all of that there. So their version of quote unquote communism is going to be different from another country's version of communism because they're factoring in the different culture of that. But let's go ahead and um, look at actually this video instead.
In less than 72 hours, Castro has destroyed the brigade. Is the worst type of war you can have when you fight against your own people. And these were Cuban, misinformed, misdirected, but that history have shown that they were wrong.
So I want to keep something in mind too, is that, you know, we can look at the Bay of Pigs invasion because we can understand that um the people who fought in the Bay of Pigs, majority of them were Cubans, Cuban exiles. Let's compare that to the gender war, which may include men fighting against you who are simps and panderers. Okay, you are going to have defectors. Okay, and America loves defectors when it's trying to get a hold of something that maybe it once had a hold of and maybe once had an economic stronghold on, right? But let's continue on with that.
Get to the United States with always the intention of going back to liberate my country. The best alternative was joining the Brigada 2506. We landed in Cuba on the 17th of April. We fought there until we run out of ammunition and we have to retreat. It's important is that the brigade never surrendered. We will never surrender. We were captured as prisoners of war, but we never raised a white flag for Castro regime. Wednesday, April 19th, resistance ends. All those who are not killed are taken prisoner. The fact is that the truth was never told to us, and we were sent there to die, mainly. And it was.
Keep in mind, the United States has no problem in using people to get to their means to an end. When you look at the American woman, she has no problem, or the Western woman, she has no problem using a guy to get to using a guy as a means to an end. When you look at, like, there's actually videos on TikTok that are allowed to be on TikTok about how to manipulate men, and they're keeping these videos on TikTok. They let them actually spread this kind of like thing, they allow it, right? So if they're allowing these kind of things, then you have to understand that they're getting it from what should we call it, from America as a place. It's built into the, like, using people is built into the infrastructure of America, basically. If anything, if anything, America, right? America would not be what it is if it wasn't for using people, if it wasn't for using other nations. So let that be a lesson. Like, like let that sink in, that America basically, it wouldn't even be what it is today if it didn't like take advantage of people, you know. I hate to say it, but it's just the honest to God truth that, America as it stands right now, it's just that's what it comes down to. America as like as a country would not function, would not function as a country if it wasn't for other like lower level countries.
It was hard to take.
On that unhappy island, the news has grown worse instead of better. I have emphasized before that this was a struggle of Cuban patriots against a Cuban dictator. While we could not be expected,
Now keep in mind those Cuban patriots that they speak about, right? I want you to keep something in mind about them. Those same Cuban patriots, right? They actually would agree with what can I say? Though they would agree with apartheid, because the thing is when Fidel Castro came into power into Cuba, right? Um One of the reasons why he came into power was for the simple fact that the government before it was very much like an apartheid government. Blacks really didn't have any rights. The lower people didn't have any rights. There was only an elite, basically, that were European descended that had rights. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's usually how it works.
to hide our sympathies, we made it repeatedly clear that the armed forces of this country would not intervene in any way.
President Kennedy, because of interests of the United States, did not abide by the plan that it was supposed to be executed when the United States had promised a air cover for our fighters. It was a promise made directed to all of us at the training camp. And our planes had no defense whatsoever. And we were told, I remember I was told very clearly, don't worry about that. And the carriers were there and the planes were there. And the pilots were ready and they suffered as much as we did. I heard the pilots saying, we want to go, let us fight, And I heard the radio commander said, the big chief forbids us to help you. We want to help you. We can do it. And they were right there. I was looking at the carrier, the destroyers, right there. And they wanted to help. And they were forced not to. When I was flown back to Miami, in front of me was a CIA agent. And I remember him crying, as I'm doing now, and saying,
The thing is about that too, you look at this Cuban and he can fit in anywhere like in Spain. He can fit in anywhere like Portugal. Hell, he can fit in anywhere like France, right? But when you look at the real Cubans who are in Cuba, okay, they don't look like him. And that's another game that these women play as well. They'll use crocodile tears and say, "Oh, no guy, these men ain't anything. Why do I keep on getting hurt?" This, that, and the other. They'll play victim. And America does a good job of playing victim as well.
forgive us. We were betrayed. Oh. Also, so it was not their fault. They were betrayed also. After the failure of the Bay of Pigs, President Kennedy came to Miami for a speech at the Orange Bowl. Kennedy was very, delivered a speech with a lot of positive view of the future, as if we had lost a battle but not the war. And he was very enthusiastic as far as what he was going to help us for the future of Cuba.
Okay, I want to also show something as well too.
Planning a family? Check your sperm count. You can test it in your room.
Opportunity to meet him several.
And
Let's see. I want you to keep in mind I've been to these places that we're showing right now. I also want to show I actually want to show like what America is trying to, America is not trying to attack these places just economically. America wants to like just destabilize things traditionally. And they want to stop this.
Las tres generaciones tenemos un modo diferente de pensar.
Y de actuar también.
Yo nunca pensé estirar el lío de Mauricio. Yo pensaba que era estar.
So you see this black woman here in Cuba who her house is owned, right? And she is supporting Fidel, as you see.
Ese hombre hizo mucho por la gente. Yo me enteré de la muerte de Fidel en la mañana que lo sentí en el radio, pero no me dio nada.
Mi concepto de revolución es muy diferente al que tiene mi tío y al que tiene mi abuela. Yo vivo en otro tiempo y a lo mejor con su fallecimiento trae un nuevo cambio.
So there's objectivity in both of the things and all of the things, but the thing is the family is still together. They still have the nuclear family unit in which America is trying to attack in these different places, Now I want to get to a country that's very sensitive right now and show you the predatory nature of it when it comes to America, And then I'm going to get to another country. In that country, I'm going to kind of go really deep dive in on that country. But before I do that, I want to cover one country, and that is Haiti. Now, I want something to be kept in mind about Haiti is that the revolution, best believe there were Muslims in the ranks of the Haitian Revolution. Best believe it. Best believe it. Best believe there were Muslims in the Haitian Revolution. Okay, let's see. Let's look at this.
Sometimes I feel like there can be a stigma. I keep a lot of things relating to my sickle cell to myself. A lot of people don't really understand, and I don't expect them to, so I just do what I know is best for me.
Mention Haiti, and this is what you'll likely hear.
Poverty, natural disaster.
Keep in mind that Haiti has many resources. Haiti has oil. Haiti has minerals. Haiti has agricultural land. Haiti has all of that, right? But they haven't had a chance to use it, and we're going to show you why.
now political violence.
Every report about Haiti has to include the line that it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere.
But hold on for a second. Something's missing in this conversation, right?
We need to be all thinking about the relationship of what we're calling poverty in Haiti and in relation to the richness of the rest of the world. And how did the rest of the world get so rich?
Let's start with France. Imagine if you were enslaved and after fighting for your independence, you were forced to spend the next couple of generations paying compensation to those who colonized you.
Now, I want you guys to kind of look at that from a perspective of a Western marriage, okay? When you look at a Western marriage, right? Chances are the woman is going to divorce you. She's going to divorce you. If you have seeds with that woman, and even if you don't have seeds with that woman, she's going to take half, right? You're going to have to end up paying alimony. You're going to have to end up paying these things. And if you decide to have seeds with her, you're going to end up paying child support. You know, you're going to end up, you're going to pay child support, right? So with that being said, I wouldn't say that child support is like reparations, but it's just another form of debt slavery that the American woman imposes on you, basically, as France did to Haiti.
Reparations for slaveholders is a new one for me.
That is exactly what happened to Haiti.
This is punishment for their unwillingness to remain under the yoke of slavery.
In 1697, France and Spain ended a war with each other by dividing up the Spanish colony Hispaniola. Through the labor of enslaved indigenous and Black people, Saint-Domingue became the world's most profitable colony, exporting sugar, coffee, and indigo.
Enslaved people in Saint-Domingue suffered some of the harshest and cruelest slave punishments in the entire Atlantic world. Life expectancy was extremely low, such that at the moment of the Haitian Revolution breaking out in August 1791, the vast majority of enslaved people had only been on the island for 2 or 3 years. They were from whatever nation that they had been captive and brought over, and they basically said no.
Self-liberated Africans led the Haitian Revolution and ended slavery in present-day.
Jean-Jacques Dessalines, by the way, he there was a chance that he was of Senegalese origin. Henry Christophe, he was of I think Bambara origin as well. Very tall guy. I think Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he was pretty tall as well. So yes, there was some Muslim stock in them. You know, I don't know if that thing was remembered by them, but yes, it was there.
Haiti and the Dominican Republic. After 12 years of fighting the French colonial power, which had tried to reintroduce slavery, the formerly enslaved people of Saint-Domingue officially declared their independence and renamed their country Haiti. Many countries, including the United States, refused to recognize Haitian independence in fear of slave rebellions. And France refused to accept Haiti's independence unless Haiti paid 150 million francs as so-called compensation for lost revenues from slavery.
Keep in mind that a woman, you know, like a Western woman, will actually not accept your freedom, you know, not accept your need to be free, not accept your need to say, hey, I'm not dealing with you anymore. I have other options out there that I can deal with, and I'm going to deal with them. They can't accept this because you're no longer under their yoke. And that's the same thing with the Western Muslim woman as well. She can't accept it. Because now you're having clubhouse rooms where they're saying right now, in these clubhouse rooms, I'm dead serious, they're saying, why is there a crisis of unmarried 20 to 30-year-old Muslim women? They brought the crisis upon themselves. Because even Allah says, anything good that happens comes from Allah. Anything bad that happens comes from the damage of your own hands. When they decided to buy into this feminist and all these these kind of Western ideologies over, the Quran and Sunnah, they got what was coming to them.
That was around 10 times Haiti's annual budget. But Haiti couldn't decline the indemnity request since the French came ready for war, carrying more than 500 cannons on their ships. Articles from that period show that the French king knew the Haitian government wouldn't be able to repay the debt, which decimated Haiti's economy. Haitians had extremely high taxes, and most of the tax revenue was paid for the indemnity. This left the education system, public infrastructures, and healthcare underdeveloped. Agricultural land was also depleted to grow cash crops that paid for the debt but couldn't feed the country. It took Haiti 122 years to pay off its debt and required taking high interest loans.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy to say that Haiti is poor and Haiti must be poor. And I think the better question whenever a people, an entire people, is characterized as poor with this word is to say, not why are they poor, but why aren't you?
But it's
And that's a fact. You know, listen, I would not be in America if it wasn't for nations like Portugal, France, and Great Britain pillaging Guinea-Bissau, pillaging Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde had one of the worst famines in the world. So many people died from drought, from what the Portuguese were doing. We wouldn't be in these places. Most immigrants wouldn't be in certain places right now if it wasn't for what these Western countries do. And when you connect that with what Western women do, maybe guys wouldn't have to even look elsewhere. If women, for example, if women from their cultures who live in the United States, who were brought up in the United States, still maintain their culture and their identity. But no, they don't maintain their culture and identity. So we have to go back home and go to these traditional places to get them.
It's not just the French who have played a role in Haiti's misery.
So the United States has intervened in Haitian affairs quite a lot.
President Moïse's assassination in 2021 left some Haitian officials calling for U.S. intervention, but not everyone agrees.
The only way that that could ever even have a fruitful outcome would be if it was because they were in dialogue with the Haitian people for the first time, because that is not what usually happens. That's not what happens at all. They dialogue with the people claiming power, and some negotiation is struck between those vying for power and the United States government. There's a lot of people saying, no, we don't want the United States to come and intervene again, because this is, again, a repetition of history.
The history that Professor Doubt is talking about involves the United States' 19-year occupation of Haiti, an occupation that killed thousands of Haitians. Following the assassination of Haiti's president in 1915, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson's administration invaded Haiti to protect U.S. investments. Then, they forced the election of a new Haitian president who would protect American interests in the country. Racist and fear-mongering rhetoric was used to justify the move.
So one thing, too, that you'll see the American woman do is that she'll use like fear-mongering tactics. And even right now, I think there's a dating roast named Derek Jan who divorced his wife, and he has a seminar, and his seminar still sold out, even though we know for a fact that he actually was cheating on his wife. And of course, it's women who are going to these seminars, right? Well, let's continue.
The occupation ensured that the U.S. prioritized its own interests in Haiti over what was best for Haitians. The U.S. occupation ended in 1934 after local dissent and rebellion grew too costly for the U.S. to control. But even after the occupation, the United States continued to play a role in the internal affairs of Haiti. In 1957, the U.S. government threw its support behind a Haitian dictator, Francois Duvalier. Duvalier and his successor, aka his son Jean-Claude, ate up aid from the United States in exchange for their strong anti-communist stand at the height of the Cold War.
Now, keep in mind, Haiti, I think, Haiti got bought off in this regard because of the simple fact that he got bought off basically because of the whole Grenada situation that we just were looking at. And that's unfortunately a problem, you know, because it led to that destabilization, but it also led to the unhappiness of his people too. But let's continue.
Haitian uprisings ended Duvalier Jr.'s rule and led to Haiti choosing its democratically elected leader, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, in 1990. But within a year, Aristide's government was toppled by a coup. Not only was one of the leaders of the coup on the CIA's payroll, but the US had set up and funded the Haitian military and National Intelligence Service, which both played key roles in the coup.
And that's what happened in Grenada as well. The United States formulated a military junta. They used the military junta in order to in order to overthrow the Grenadian government. You know, that's pretty much was their goal was to basically achieve that. You know, it's sad, but this is actually what happened in the matter, you know. But let's continue.
Ousted Aristide returned to his second presidency in 2001 and again was forced out of office by a coup that he claimed the US had orchestrated. And after that, President Obama's cabinet pressured a Haitian presidential candidate to withdraw in 2010.
We see reports coming out of various civil society organizations saying that Haitians have lost faith in the electoral process because it doesn't reflect their actual concerns.
And that brought us to the 2016 Haitian presidential election, where late President Moïse was elected with an extremely low voter turnout, but US backing. In February 2021, Moïse refused to step down at the end of his term. The US once again backed him while thousands of Haitian protesters took to the streets.
Many Haitians are saying, we want to try actual Haitian democracy, where the Haitian people, not just the elite and the bourgeoisie and the business interests, get to have a say and determine the direction and future of the country.
So I want you to keep something in mind that that's pretty much what it is with, like, for better or for worse. We have to understand something when it comes to the you know the women, you know, the women make themselves available to, I guess you can say, the bourgeoisie of American society, being the top tier guys. You know what I mean? And so with that being said, is with that being said, it kind of goes back into the point of, you know, America's only concern is about its own you know, its own, like, bottom line, you know? And that's just the reality, you know, of the whole situation. Well, let's continue.
It's clear that Haiti's poverty and political instability has long been influenced and shaped by foreign players. So, knowing this, where does Haiti go from here?
We have never been able to see what could happen in this particular Black country without meddling and interference. We should try something new in the United States, and that is back off and back away and let the Haitian people determine their own future.
I don't think that'll ever happen, though. I really don't think that would ever happen in Haiti, that those people will be able to determine their own future. But now I want to go into this. This is a very heavy one. It may take a little bit longer too for me to actually do the whole thing.
Legal accountability for the politicians or the population. The perpetual occupation of Afghanistan has become so normalized, it mostly serves as background noise to Americans. It's even jokingly referred to as the forever war, accepted as just a constant reality. A soldier dies now and again, a couple dozen civilians get killed in another bombing. It's never enough to stir the population to pressure Washington to stop it. The endless war drags on. Since 2001, almost 1 million U.S. troops have been deployed to Afghanistan, many repeatedly. Of those, 2,300 have died. And the new revelation that nearly 4,000 U.S. mercenaries have also died fighting in Afghanistan, almost double the number of U.S. troops, shows the American occupation is even bigger than we've been led to believe. From Bush to Obama to Trump, every president promised to end the war. But always, their plans to bring the troops home first required sending more troops.
People often ask me, how long will this last? This particular battlefront will last as long as it takes to bring al-Qaeda to justice. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen a month from now. It may take a year or two.
So I want you to keep something in mind about American leadership. A lot of times American leadership, they talk in circles. Like they'll say one thing, they'll do another thing. And then on top of like saying one thing and doing another thing, there's never a straight answer. You know, there's never actually a straight answer to what they're talking about. You know what I mean?
But we will prevail.
Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and by 2014, the war in Afghanistan will be over.
Equate like these lies with the lies that women tell to dudes that, oh, I want a nice guy. Oh, I want a guy who caters to me. Oh, I want a guy who buys me flowers. Oh, I want this, that, and the other. And their actions show opposite, that they want that. And they also show that, like, at this point, it's just not gonna happen, you know. They want that after they've been doing everything under the sun, you know.
And as Commander-in-Chief, I have determined that it is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan. Others will ask.
So keep that in mind, what you just heard, that, you know, keep that in mind, that they'll say one thing and they'll do another. Okay? That's what happens. They'll basically do, and you can look at American women, right? American women will tell you what they want, but they'll go for opposite of what they want, or what they said they wanted. You know, that's the thing. That's what they do, you know. It's talking in circles. That's what happens. It's like they talk in circles, man. Just like their leaders, you know, talking in circles.
Why don't we leave immediately? That answer is also clear. We must give Afghanistan the opportunity to stabilize.
The consequences of a rapid exit are both predictable and unacceptable. We will not talk about numbers of troops or our plans for further military activities. Conditions on the ground, not arbitrary timetables, will guide our strategy from now on.
And there's a reason, despite an unresolvable military quagmire, that the empire won't let go of Afghanistan. First, you have to look at the world in the same way the capitalist class looks at the world, as a chessboard. Every country another piece on an imperial puzzle they long to complete.
Maybe you can be one of us, the few, the proud, the Marines.
Afghanistan, just as a landmass, sits at the doorstep of the main rising competitors to American hegemony: China, India, and Russia. It also borders oil-rich nations the U.S. wants to dominate: Iran, and a litany of former Soviet republics. This central positioning has long made Afghanistan the dream site of oil pipelines planned by U.S. corporations. But those untapped profits pale in comparison to Afghanistan's real hidden treasure. In 2010, an internal Pentagon memo identified $1 trillion in mineral wealth beneath Afghan soil. The Pentagon said Afghanistan could become the Saudi Arabia of lithium.
Keep in mind, equate that to when a woman sees a man with money. Okay? Be it like, I want to say, be it sees him in a nice car, sees him like dressed nice, like dressed to I want to say a dressed to a T. Let's just say he's wearing like designer. She sees opportunity, and she sees basically a come up. And that's how, I'm gonna be honest with you, that's kind of how I want to say America sees these countries with resources, you know, as a come up. So it shouldn't be a wonder that this is how the women think as well, when this place as a nation has always had these sentiments.
A mineral used in every smartphone and laptop. Lithium is only one of many resources to be pillaged. As the report explained, huge veins of iron, copper, cobalt, gold, and critical industrial metals are so big and include so many minerals that are essential to modern industry that Afghanistan could eventually be transformed into one of the most important mining centers in the world.
The resources have never been fully exploited because of decades of armed conflict. In a visit to Washington last month, Afghan President Hamid Karzai said the value could be up to $3 trillion.
It's very heartening that Afghanistan has a very bright future if the Afghan mineral reserves are properly extracted.
Keeping U.S. forces in Afghanistan simply to secure rights to strip the ground is more than enough reason for the empire. Coincidentally, since the U.S. invasion, Afghanistan has become the largest opium producer in the world.
Ironic, huh? What a coincidence.
At the same time, the United States has the world's biggest appetite for opium.
What a coincidence. Right?
Which Big Pharma is currently forced to pay a pretty premium to purchase from India and Turkey. If only there was a country the US could exploit as a neo-colony for the same product. Not to mention, the CIA has a long history of using illicit drug money to fund its black ops.
And look at that as American woman too, because like when you look at American women, like there's whole channels where an American woman, American B-dub, will say that she'll take a drug dealer over an honest working guy, and that will finance her lifestyle. Basically, the proceeds from his illegal lifestyle, be it drug dealing or scamming, will finance her lifestyle.
While there are so many different sources of potential profit to be made with a total victory, for now, it's the military-industrial complex that is reaping the greatest rewards. A significant slice of the unknown trillions the US has spent in Afghanistan has gone straight to corporate defense contractors. Every bomb dropped or bullet fired, every aircraft or mercenary deployed is another $1 million payment to the defense industry. Good thing they're also determining the policy. The top 3 war profiteers are Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. Just a coincidence then that Trump appointed Lockheed Martin's senior executive John Rood as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and Raytheon's senior executive Mark Esper as Secretary of Defense, who replaced Boeing's senior executive Patrick Shanahan. Do we need any more proof that war is a racket? When you take a closer look at the Afghanistan war, it's glaringly apparent that all of these lives are being sacrificed for the continued financial gain of multi-billion-dollar firms. It's a reality so scandalous, so transparently criminal, that it should be all the political ammo that's needed to force the war to end. The problem with this war is there's virtually no pressure for any politician or military official to take responsibility or be held accountable. Anyone in power can just wait to pass the problem on to the next executor. And for this war to end, we have to look at where it really started. Afghanistan has a rich cultural history spanning over 3,000 years. It has spawned various musical, architectural, and artistic traditions.
And I want you guys to also keep something in mind with Afghanistan that I was just made aware of. Now, Afghanistan is a multi-tribal society. So you have Pashtuns as the majority, but you also have Uzbeks, you also have Tajiks, and you also have Turkmen too. And a lot of those tribes came into Afghanistan during the time of the Soviet Union because they weren't really satisfied with what was going on in the Soviet Union. So they decided to leave.
But when colonialism and US interference enters into their history, this growth was sent backwards. Today, Afghanistan has been reduced to one of the poorest countries in the world. Modern Afghanistan was first invaded and occupied by the British Empire in 1838 and was marred in guerrilla war and subjugation until they won their independence almost 80 years later. But independence in 1919 began decades of rule by a feudal monarchy that would last 60 years before the Saur Revolution put into power the Socialist People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. The new government implemented land reform, equality for women, legalization of trade unions, and a sweeping literacy campaign. The CIA helped organize and arm the old landlord class and conservative religious sectors into militias to overthrow the new state. The Soviet Union sent its military to support the communists against the Mujahideen insurgency. While it staved off the overthrow of the Saur Revolution, it cemented a state of permanent violence. The US initiated Operation Cyclone, which had the explicit goal of locking the Soviet army in a quagmire.
We have logistics from the Afghanistan freedom fighters.
The CIA imposed a state of civil war as they pumped billions of dollars to fund the Mujahideen, a bloody guerrilla war that laid the foundation for the endless fighting still today.
It is entirely true that this was a war that was fought with our gold, but with their blood.
Journalist.
You heard that, right? Our goal, but their blood. So that's kind of how we have to look at how Western women are. They have a goal in mind, and their goal is to survive. And the way they will survive is off the backs of our labor and the resources that come from our labor. But as I said, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem if they were giving something in return that are tangible benefits that don't necessarily have to be financial benefits. But they're not doing that. That's where the disconnect comes, basically.
Ahmed Rashid writes about the effect of this U.S. operation. Some 35,000 Muslim radicals from 40 Islamic countries joined Afghanistan's fight between 1982 and 1992. Afghan people don't have a history of being religious zealots. To create
Afghan people, believe it or not, they actually have a history of I want to say really spiritual Islam, what people like to call Sufism. Afghans have actually that experience, That's the one they have. Well, let's continue.
The CIA desired jihad required the recruitment of Arab, Egyptian, and Pakistani extremists. So the fundamentalism that emerged in Afghanistan is a CIA construct.
And I want to make that clear too. A lot of times when you see these different things going on, these different stories, a lot of times those things are illusion. For example, in the last thing that we looked at, the with Cuba and the American destabilization and the and even in another place, Venezuela, with American interference with that whole thing is a made up thing. When they say, like, they create these things, they create this narrative of communism and things like that, or Marxist lineage. In fact, I think one of them called Grenada a Marxist virus. That was something that was made up, though. You know what I mean? Because the reality on the ground was quite different. And that's the same thing here in Afghanistan.
One of the key players in organizing these recruitment training camps was none other than Osama bin Laden, and fighters that comprised the Mujahideen later became the Taliban.
We've just held a very useful, and I might say brief, but also I'll add a very moving discussion with Chairman Yunus Khalis of the Islamic Union of Mujahideen of Afghanistan. I expressed our nation's continued strong support for the resistance.
After 20 years of violent clashes and the withdrawal of the Soviet army, the Taliban eventually seized power in 1996. This victory was initially welcomed by Washington. With the Soviet Union out and an end to the armed conflict, the US might finally be able to start building that oil pipeline they wanted. So Unocal, the Union Oil Company of California, and the Clinton administration promoted the Taliban as the best source of stability to serve US capital and manage its pipeline projects.
One of the things with the Taliban is that they didn't have a clue about
the oil and gas business. The idea was to bring them over and establish some credibility with the Taliban that we were a real company.
Marty Miller secretly invited a group of Taliban leaders to Unical's headquarters in Sugar Land, Texas. No press covered the event. Marty Miller was vice president of oil company Unical. They wanted to build a huge oil and gas pipeline through Taliban-controlled areas of Afghanistan. But how did these negotiations influence U.S. foreign policy towards the Taliban?
But despite friendly formal relations between Clinton and the Taliban, they were secretly harboring Osama bin Laden as he cultivated al-Qaeda and declared a fatwa on the U.S.
The U.S. government has committed acts that are extremely unjust, hideous, and criminal through its support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And we believe the U.S. is directly responsible for those killed in Palestine.
One thing, too, that I want you to keep in mind about this is that, like women, the United States will play, like its women, the United States will play both sides of the fence. So, like, for example, I hate to say, I won't name any names. I'm not going to name any names. But you'll have women who will go up to bat for men, right? In the manosphere space, you'll have these women, right? But at the same time, their nature is women. Their human nature, it will come out, and then we'll find out the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is that they will be women at the end of the day. Or I should say they will be Western women at the end of the day. That's what I'll say. They'll be Western women at the end of the day. So they may have a channel or a platform that goes up to bat for us. But, their true colors are still going to be there. You know what I mean? Well, let's continue.
Lebanon, and Iraq. For this and other acts of aggression and injustice, we have declared jihad against the U.S. The U.S. today has set a double standard, calling whoever goes against its injustice a terrorist. It wants to occupy our countries, steal our resources, impose agents on us to rule us, and then wants us to agree to all this.
Now, that's one thing I have to really kind of have to agree with in terms of bin Laden is that is pretty accurate. That is pretty accurate because when you think about it, right? When you really think about it, you not like that's what American women essentially want, is they want to, like, let me repeat what he just said, because what he said was a mouthful and it's facts.
And Iraq. For this and other acts of aggression and injustice, we have declared jihad against the U.S. The U.S. today has set a double standard, calling whoever goes against its injustice a terrorist. It wants to occupy our countries, steal our resources, impose agents on us to rule us, and then wants us to agree to all this.
So what a Western woman wants you to do basically is that she wants you to basically provide for her. She wants you to basically protect her. And she wants you to basically, according to her logic, she doesn't have to cook, she doesn't have to clean, but she expects you to agree with this. And now a new thing that's coming out is that in terms of the Black community, Black women, they want to date out and they want to date other men and stuff like that from outside of their ethnic group, but they want you to be okay with it, right? But they're not okay with you doing the same thing. I find that quite odd.
The Clinton administration deemed the Taliban an unreliable partner for the oil pipelines. With negotiations on construction for Unocal falling apart, the U.S. was looking for a reason to invade. Shortly after George W. Bush came to power, they got the perfect excuse. Today, it's almost universal that, of course, the U.S. had to invade Afghanistan in retaliation. But that's just another lie. In fact, as soon as U.S. bombing began, the Taliban offered to capture and extradite bin Laden for trial.
The Taliban say that evidence of bin Laden's guilt should be given to a neutral government, and they warn that countries attacking Afghanistan have always come to grief.
Make no mistake, Afghanistan, as it was in the past, the Great Britain he came, the Red Army came, Afghanistan is a swamp.
We know this from not only intelligence, but from the history of military conflict in Afghanistan. It's been one of initial success, followed by long years of floundering and ultimate failure. We're not going to repeat that mistake.
With total imperial hubris, Bush arrogantly invaded Afghanistan, rejected the Taliban's offer, and instead declared that the goal of the war was not just destroying al-Qaeda, but for some reason also overthrowing the Taliban.
And the fact is that such people were instigated by the CIA and by the government of America at that time to go and fight the Soviets. And such people were called the heroes of independence. And all of a sudden, they have changed now to terrorists. We don't say that we are defending terrorism, but we need to know whether they are really terrorists or not. We were called the puppets of America until 1998. So we don't know as to what to do now. We have been given no counter proposals. And now the perception in Afghanistan is that maybe the United States is always looking for a boogeyman.
In the blink of an eye, the U.S. was at war with people who had no role.
So one thing I want to say is that what America will do is it won't take accountability for its actions, like American women don't take accountability for their actions. So like, you know, they'll be like, oh, what did we do? What did we do? And things like that when they've like destabilized countless countries, and then they wonder why these same countries are basically looking for something different or looking for a different way out, you know? So it's like, okay, why are you upset, basically, you know? Why are you upset at the aftermath of your actions? That's what confuses the hell out of me. Like you guys brought this upon yourselves, but now you want to play victim. It makes no sense to me.
And the 9/11 attacks. Conveniently, the U.S. already had a new regime picked out for Afghanistan, including Chevron consultant and CIA asset Hamid Karzai, the first president.
With US backing, Hamid Karzai was inaugurated as president. His brother had been working for Unocal, and Karzai was well acquainted with the pipeline plans.
From the very beginning, the U.S.-led occupation of Afghanistan proved quite pointless.
The hunt for al-Qaeda and Taliban goes on. And we stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States and our other coalition allies in the global war of terrorism.
Keep in mind that what has happened now is that like British and Canadian women have followed have followed behind in this affair. So this is why, like, it's just the Western women in general. So I want you to keep that in mind.
How many Al Qaeda have you captured?
We haven't captured any Al Qaeda, but
And how many have you actually managed to kill here in southeast Afghanistan?
we haven't killed any.
The war immediately became a quagmire, mostly laughed off by Washington, as the patriotic infection post 9/11 made them immune from criticism. Looking back, they knew this 20-year disaster was doomed from the start.
Sir, may I borrow your
Y'all point. You tell me where to point.
Okay.
I've been waiting all day to do this.
Just hit me in the back of the head, Mr.
How much of what you've just described relates to or fulfills, I guess, whatever prior planning went into this, and how much of it, frankly, is a surprise?
How much of this is a surprise? What is this? What was taking place in the earlier phases was exactly as planned. It looked like nothing was happening. Indeed, it looked like we were in a, altogether now, quagmire. Stalemate, yes.
The unraveling war largely faded into the background as the U.S. launched another full-scale invasion of Iraq less than 2 years later. And the disaster of Iraq quickly overshadowed the disaster of Afghanistan. The Afghanistan failure may have gotten more attention were it not for the catastrophic bloodshed in Baghdad. For the first few years, more than 10 times as many U.S. troops were killed in Iraq than they were in Afghanistan.
There has been a lot of progress since 2001. After all, girls are back in school. You've got...
And so that's one thing that they'll do to you too. They'll let you think that you know, these places that they're invading, that they do these things too, are actually working, actually progressing. And when you look at it, when you, for example, look at when you look at women and their feminism and stuff like that, like, they'll let you know that they're progressing and things like that, right? But you wonder if it's really progress because of the simple fact that, you know, they still have the innate need to bash men. And it's like, okay, if you were really progressing, if you were really happy, you wouldn't be bashing men. You would be living your best life, you know? You wouldn't be saying things like men ain't ish, stuff like that. You would be living your best life if you were really happy and progressing. You know, you wouldn't spend all day on forums and all day on TikTok talking about the trash men you date. You know what I mean?
Boys flying kites again in Afghanistan.
The anger of the country mounted against Bush's handling of Iraq, as U.S. and civilian deaths in Afghanistan quietly grew year by year. And in 2008, Americans elected Barack Obama, the candidate who essentially ran on a strategy to end the wars and bring the troops home. But for anyone reading between the lines, Obama's anti-war argument was that we were focusing on the dumb war in Iraq and neglecting the good war in Afghanistan.
I don't oppose war in all circumstances. And when I look out over this crowd today, I know there is no shortage of patriots or patriotism. What I do oppose is a dumb war.
With the same two-faced rhetoric, Obama announced the end of the Afghanistan war by announcing it was first going into overdrive.
And going forward, we will not blindly stay the course. Instead, we will set clear metrics to measure progress and hold ourselves accountable. And that America has no interest in fighting an endless war in Afghanistan. And as our coalition agreed, by the end of 2014, the Afghans will be fully responsible for the security of their country.
Casualties surged. U.S. troops requiring limb amputations increased 60%, with a 90% increase in severe wounds to their genitalia.
Well, I haven't, like, well, I haven't like did the research on why that happened to their genitalia. I'm guessing that the Afghan snipers were so accurate that they, that they basically went for that area, like that was the area that was like basically what they wanted to hit. They wanted to hit they wanted to hit that area, and so I think they may have succeeded in doing that.
Other than that, Obama's strategy accomplished nothing. The grand plan to defeat the Taliban with 100,000 U.S. troops went up in smoke, proving once and for all the war was objectively unwinnable. When military defeat became clear, it began years of bumbling, confused generals using soldiers as bait to pointlessly fend off constant attacks with no discernible purpose.
Simply continue to tighten the noose until we get where we want to go.
Are we losing this war? Absolutely no way. Can the enemy win it? Absolutely no way.
Lieutenant General David Rodriguez, Deputy Commander of U.S. Forces in Afghanistan. General, great to see you, and it looks like you are ready to watch some Army football. We sure are. We got our football signed by the team, we got our hat, and we're ready to watch some ball tonight.
We have made significant progress with regards to our primary mission of disrupting, dismantling, and ultimately defeating al-Qaeda.
We are not losing it, and the enemy cannot win.
This undeniable progress has allowed us to begin transitioning to Afghan security control.
I can see the columns tomorrow and all the parts. Look, the truth is that I feel like, we're making some steady progress. It's a slow win, I guess, is probably what we're accomplishing right on over here. It's not the way that I think both the Afghans, the international community, and the American people would like to see us conduct this war.
On one small mountainside alone, Korengal Valley, 150 U.S. troops died to control the passageway, only for the next commander to admit it had no strategic importance at all, and left. So, after a string of humiliations on a sprawling battlefield, the U.S. retreated, but stopped short of a full withdrawal. Obama drew down only enough to keep the U.S. occupation in command. And so began the strategy we see continue today, a forever stalemate. Just enough soldiers to keep a U.S. foothold, just few enough dying to keep it out of the headlines.
Afghanistan is a total and complete disaster. What are we doing? Let's get with it. Get out of Afghanistan. We've wasted billions and billions of dollars, and more importantly, thousands and thousands of lives.
Trump campaigned on ending the...
I want you to keep something in mind too. What the United States will do, they'll send someone who has historically been your enemy. They'll make them act like it's your ally, and that's pretty much what American Black women have fallen into. When they bought into feminism. When you see this, for example, Kim Chi Karen going at passport bros, the Black women look at her as an ally, but really, she's not an ally at all.
Endless wars, including in Afghanistan. But like a true con artist, Trump expanded the U.S. military in every region of the world. In Afghanistan, despite the rhetoric that he was bringing the troops home, he dramatically escalated the war. When the new emperor was faced with the question, how much more blood and treasure wasted on an unwinnable war, he answered, a lot more.
My original instinct was to pull out. And historically, I like following my instincts. But all my life, I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. In other words, when you're president of the United States.
Instead of continuing Obama's slow withdrawal of troops, Trump kicked it up again. When Obama left office, there were 8,400 U.S. troops left in Afghanistan. Now, there are about 14,000. While now they talk of a major drawdown, no action has been taken, and they only claim to want to return to the levels of the original 8,400. You'd never know it from watching the news, but U.S. troops are still dying in Afghanistan. To date, 73 have died under Trump, and 2019 was the deadliest for Americans in 5 years. But this only scratches the surface. Trump also gave the Pentagon new authorization to bomb anything, anytime, leading to more bombs dropped on Afghanistan than any other president. Trump dropped more bombs there in 2018 and 2019 than in any other year during the entire war. Let that sink in for a second. The most bombing of any other year, more than during the massive bombing invasion of Afghanistan right after 9/11, more than Obama's troop surge in 2010, when 100,000 soldiers were engaged in the heaviest fighting. But Trump's most terrifying escalation is not even his sheer number of bombs, but their size. Marking a new chapter in the war, he oversaw the largest non-nuclear bomb to ever be dropped, with a blast radius of 1 mile.
That is what freedom looks like. That's the red, white, and blue.
Well, one of my favorite things is watching bombs drop on bad guys.
And so that's one thing that will be said too, is that like American women will give this like, or Western women in general will give you this this like expression that they're free, that they're liberated and things like that. And because they're able to do OnlyFans and things like that, and they're able to be in the workforce and what have you. They're strong, independent, and what have you, but yet they're doing all of these things, but they're actually just pretty much in a revolving door that doesn't really have any end goal for them, because I hate to say it, but now because they're doing this, they feel that they don't have to date lower. They feel like that they have to date higher. And the thing is about dating higher, that higher guy is going to value peace over competition with his woman. And for some reason, American women have the need to compete with their men. I don't know why that is.
The mother of all bombs.
Now at 11, the mother of all bombs,
The White House and the press gleefully repeated its name, the mother of all bombs, or Moab. The name itself tells you everything you need to know. The origin of the mother of all prefix is the Quran. Mecca, or Muslims' holiest site, means the mother of all cities. Using the mother of all bombs to bomb Muslims is almost too dystopian to believe. Trump, in many ways, used the Moab as a statement, as a threat, rather than a battlefield decision. The Pentagon claimed 0 civilian casualties. But when challenged about how it was possible to know, Trump's man Mattis said, "Frankly, digging into tunnels to count dead bodies is probably not a good use of our troops' time." Civilians in Afghanistan have always been the #1 victims of this unfair war. Conservative estimates put Afghan dead at over 150,000 since the occupation.
We have the greatest military in the world, and they've done a job as usual. So we have given them total authorization, and that's what they're doing. And frankly, that's why they've been so successful lately. If you look at what's happened over the last 8 weeks and compare that really to what's happened over the last 8 years, you'll see there's a tremendous difference.
Shockingly, Afghanistan today is suffering the highest number of fatalities from the entire war. vast majority from US forces. Trump presided over a 52% increase in civilian casualties in just his first 9 months in office. It was only his second week in office when a US airstrike killed 18 women and children in Helmand province. Hundreds more would soon meet the same fate. And that's just from US strikes. They've pressed their Afghan puppet forces to increase their strikes as well, with their own explosion of civilian casualties. In April 2017, the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan found that US-backed forces killed 71 Afghan civilians in a single strike, 30 of them children. An entire generation of Afghan youth know no reality but US bombing and occupation. It's no wonder that a study found that 2/3 of Afghanistan's surviving population suffers mental health problems as a result of the war.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but another thing that American women do, is they say, you know, American single mothers especially, I don't think they care about the damage that they cause their kids in like keeping them away from their fathers. So, I guess when they reflect, like when a kid reflects, because this happens a lot, when a kid reflects on that, like, understanding that there's another side of the story that was not made aware to them, it kind of does something to that kid. It makes them mad, it makes them upset. And it, especially like there was this special with Little Scrappy, I think, one of the rappers, Little Scrappy. And you can tell his mom messed him up. You can tell. And then you can also tell that his mom didn't want to take accountability for messing him up. And that's one thing America doesn't do. America will go pillage a place, take its resources, install a puppet government, but it won't take accountability when that place basically is in flames or that place has other uprisings once it leaves that place and things like that. It never takes accountability. You look at what it did to Libya, right? It left Libya in shambles, but it never bothered to try to help it rebuild. As Hillary Clinton said, we came, we saw, he died. Those were her words.
And they can't even claim the strategy of callous killing is working. The Taliban today controls more territory than it ever has during the entire war. So to cover up this failure, they simply found new ways to lie to the public about it. In a bombshell 2018 expose, the New York Times found the Pentagon was claiming the Taliban only controlled 44% of districts, when in reality, they dominated 61%.
We're like policemen. We're not fighting a war. If we wanted to fight a war in Afghanistan and win it, I could win that war in a week. I just don't want to kill 10 million people. I have plans on Afghanistan that if I wanted to win that war, Afghanistan would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It would be over literally in 10 days.
The impossibility of defeating the Taliban is why the Trump administration is pushing direct talks to try to negotiate a power-sharing agreement that allows permanent U.S. influence. Keep in mind, a deal with the Taliban was already official policy throughout the Obama years. The whole time we were told the evil Taliban must be defeated. It was always admitted behind the scenes that they would always be in power.
It was always the same thing with women. Oh, the patriarchy must be defeated. The misogynist must be defeated. The chauvinistic pig must be defeated. When none of that was even the reality of the situation.
The U.S. just wanted a piece of the pie. So what's the deal with this deal? While details change constantly, one consistent feature is allowing U.S. troops or bases to remain in the country. Even Trump recently bragged that the Taliban actually wants us to stay. So let me get this straight. We can't leave Afghanistan until we get the Taliban to accept a deal. But the terms of that deal is allowing U.S. bases to stay in Afghanistan. So doesn't that prove that they never intend to leave? When polled, 90% of the Afghan people strongly support a deal with the Taliban. Here are Afghan women and Afghan army soldiers who had just been fighting them, taking selfies with the Taliban during a ceasefire in 2018. But since the negotiations are dictated by the US, not Afghans, it wields impossible language that gives Washington a blanket excuse to break it at any time. For example, many were shocked that the major peace deal finally signed between the US and the Taliban on February 29th of this year signified that US bases would, in fact, be closed. But it was a farce. The alleged US withdrawal was all premised on the Taliban, quote, preventing any individual or organization from threatening the US. How could something like that ever be enforced or accomplished? How could it even be measured? The supposed political achievement was on such a flimsy foundation that it only took 4 days for the US to call it off and start bombing the Taliban again. The constant...
I want you to look at that too. Like, compare that situation to women doing this soft girl era, living in their soft girl phase. It'll be like temporary, right? But then they'll revert back to their original selves. And that's just like evil women in the West. You know what I mean? That's the whole situation.
Tease of a peace deal with the Taliban seems to only serve the purpose of assuring the public that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Without the constant promise by Trump saying there's going to be a great deal, Washington would just have to admit that there is no end in sight. Early in 2019, there was another revelation that should have been the final nail in the coffin for the American war effort: the Afghanistan Papers.
Confidential documents published last week by the Washington Post revealed that for years, senior U.S. officials misled the public about the war in Afghanistan. There's a senior national security official who said that there was constant pressure from the Obama White House to produce figures showing the troop surge was working, and I'm quoting from the report here, despite hard evidence to the contrary. As vice president, what did you know?
Afghanistan?
Yes, sir, Afghanistan.
That's it, too.
The Afghanistan Papers proved once and for all what we've been saying all along, that all our military and political leaders consider the war unwinnable, that they can't explain what winning would even look like, and they've adopted an official policy of lying about everything.
And that's what modern women do. They lie about everything. They lie about every single thing. You know, they lie about their body count. They lie about basically just everything. Lie about what they want in men. Everything. Just every single last thing. So I want you to keep this in mind. That they didn't get it from, it didn't come from like just their innate nature. It came from the system that they were a part of and the system that they bought into.
Just to keep it going. The papers barely got any coverage in the mass media and were given no attention by Congress because they implicate both parties. The magnitude of these revelations is so great, so scandalous, that it should have created the political fallout necessary to force the war's end, just like the impact the Pentagon Papers had on the Vietnam War. With the long strategy of keeping the issue of the war suppressed, it went largely unnoticed.
You do think there should be some U.S. presence that remains
Yes,
in
a very
Afghanistan?
small presence to be able to determine whether or not, I mean a small footprint,
What does that look like?
It looks like several thousand people.
What do we want? USA! When do we want it? Now!
Through the 2 decades of war, there have been 2 decades of resistance to it.
The Coalition of Veterans Organizations is reaching out to active duty soldiers, saying the tide has turned against the war in Afghanistan. Their message: you don't have to go if you don't want to.
In fact, you don't have to be there. And that's what this campaign is all about, letting people know what their options are.
All you need to do is apply for conscientious objector status.
We signed up to serve our country, but we didn't sign up to have our lives thrown away in a political chess game.
The tide of the anti-war struggle has risen and fallen. And now is the time again to build the next wave of resistance. It's pretty obvious to most Americans at this point. There's absolutely no acceptable.
So that's the end of that. So I just wanted to show you guys that. I know maybe some people will catch the replay, but I just wanted to show you guys the nature of the United States. You know, a lot of Americans who are born and bred in the country, you know, like they're born and bred in America and stuff like that. They'll always like try to come back with like, okay, if you're not happy with this country, why don't you leave? And the thing is that you guys set it up so like you have to work very, very hard to leave the country, because if we go back to our respective countries, we have to go with many resources. We can't just go there empty-handed and say, hey, here I am. Let's build something up. So that's my answer to them. And my other question to them is like, why don't they leave? You know, why don't they leave the world scene and like imposing themselves on other nations? That's really my question. And then another thing is, like, you wonder why the women are the way they are in America. You just have to look at their foreign policy and like how they are operating, the way they're operating right now, you know. And let this just be a message that we have to just really take heed in, really, you know. Really just got to take heed in regards to why American women are the way they are, you know. It's sad, but this is just how it goes, you know. But anyhow, I would like to get your thoughts and comments in the comment section. I know this video was a little bit different, but if you guys like videos like this, just let me know and I can do more videos like it. I can like go ahead and like devote some videos to subject matter like this, if this is what you guys are into, you know what I mean? I've always been into this, you know, because I've always never believed the underlining factor that America presents, or the West in general presents, you know. But anyhow, that's all I got for now. Leave your thoughts, leave your comments. It's still SYSMB. Save yourself, Muslim brother. And I'm off until the next one. Injarama.